Hello, thank you for joining us. We'll wait just a few seconds for all participants to log on and we'll get started very soon. Hello again. We'll go ahead and get started now. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join today's webinar focused on the new release of Optum 9.1. This presentation is brought to you by BTRG. I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that once again, through our premier IBM partnership, BTRG is offering a discount registration for IBM Information on Demand 2013. This year's event returns to Mandalay Bay Resort from November 3rd through the 7th. If you register between now and September 13 and enter the BTRG code G13 BTRG, again, that code is G13 BTRG, you can save an additional $100 off your registration for a total discount of $400. BTRG is also excited to announce that we are giving away a full conference pass to IOD valued over $2,100. If you'd like to find out how to win this fabulous prize, please reach out to Ross Clark at infogov@btrgroup.com. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's webinar. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question box located near the bottom of the control panel. Throughout our presentation, we encourage you to interact with our speakers by typing in questions and comments using the questions pane. We'll be addressing questions live both during the event and after the presentation. At this point, I'd like to introduce our featured speakers. Mike Martin is the Practice Director for Information Governance at BTRG. Jonathan Vivian is a Solution Architect at BTRG. Brian Scott is also a Solution Architect at BTRG. Tom Nestor is an Information Governance Consultant at BTRG, and Peter Costigan is the Optum Product Line Manager at IBM. So without further delay, we'll get started now with the presentation. Thank you again for joining us, and Mike, take it away.
Great. Thanks very much, Desi. I appreciate the introduction. And so we have a good panel discussion. I will be leading the conversation, and the solution architects and other folks from BTRG, as well as Peter from IBM, will be chiming in as we go through. So just super quick about BTRG. We've been around for 20 years. As Desi said, I'm the practice director for our information governance practice. And really what we focus on with this practice is helping customers really move from a view of information governance perhaps as a necessary evil into a place where we look at information governance as a very significant cost-saving measure and a way that we can dramatically reduce risk in our enterprise through data management and data security initiatives. And you can see some of the applications we focus on as well as the industries. So at BTRG, we really work across most of the industries with great deep expertise and customers in each one of those areas. So today's focus for our webinar is really to review Optum 9.1, which is the latest version of IBM's Infosphere Optum solution, where we'll talk about the new and powerful features and options and ways you can utilize those features, understanding why this functionality is important, and also how to get there, how to get to Optum 9.1 from wherever you are today, and also how upgrading to Optum 9.1 really has a lot of value for your enterprise, both to reduce the total cost of ownership around Optum, but also what it can do for your enterprise applications. So as we go through the agenda today, we'll be looking at some of these high impact features. There are many, many new features, I think over 60 new features in 9.1. We've boiled down some of the ones we feel are the high impact and high value features. We'll talk about why you should really seriously consider 9.1, how we can help get you there, and how you can get to the latest version of Optum quite in a straightforward manner with a review of the upgrade process itself. And then really how to maximize the investment that you've made in Optum with these new features, but also BTRG's value-driven solutions that really focus on driving benefit of Optum, and certainly time for questions at the end. So what I'll do right now is launch a quick poll question. Just give me a second to launch that. Just really want to understand with the audience here who is currently using Optum. If you have deployed it, then I would mark yourself as a yes. If you own it but you have not deployed it, I would say no. And if you don't know if you own it or not, then just go not sure. So we're seeing good numbers coming in around people who are using it. I'll give a few more seconds there. About half of the people have voted. So go ahead and vote on that poll if you haven't already. Give about 5 more seconds there, and then I'll be able to share the results with everybody. So I'll go ahead and close that poll out. Please vote if you haven't. Okay, we got about 70%. I'm going to close that. And you should see the results on your screen right now. So 68% of the attendees here are using Optum, 14% not. So for that 14%, we'll certainly try and talk about ways you can deploy it. And a lot of the things that we'll talk about of upgrading Optum will apply to deploying as well. So thank you for your participation in that poll. That always helps a lot. And again, please feel free to type questions in the chat window as Desi talked about. So again, I think this should be a slide that most people will recognize. Just talking about what Optum is, we feel it really is kind of a cornerstone of your information governance strategy because it has very wide and integrated data management capabilities. Discovery you see is there, so discovering relationships and data, sensitive data, and of course the broad platform support that Optum has. Now in 9.1 we've included some new things, so there's a few little differences you might see here where we have support for Hadoop and Netezza and more sources, along with the broad support from storage to platforms to databases to applications. And here at BTRG we do a lot of focus on Optum for applications, especially with our deep Oracle expertise that we have here in-house at BTRG. 9.1 was released in October of last year, so it really has been out there for a while now, and it's a very stable release. So some of the high impact features that we will be discussing today and giving you a little bit more information on is the fact that Infosphere Discovery is now included in Optum 9.1 Enterprise Edition. So a very powerful tool that you can now use without any additional cost now in 9.1. There's a new feature called Optum Search to allow you to easily find data in archives. We'll talk more about that. Increased support for Netezza, which is a very popular platform from IBM that's now integrated. So if you're a Netezza owner, that's great news for you. There's broader support and new features that support e-discovery or legal discovery. Optum Test Data Management and Data Privacy now has a new user experience that we'll show you called Optum Designer and Manager. There's additional integration there. There's a brand new function for masking with Trans NID that we'll cover about. And then really we're going into a little bit of detail on masking on demand, which is a very powerful new feature in Optum 9.1. So before we get into those features, just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're going to convey and what we recommend to our customers around why you would upgrade to 9.1. So at an overarching level around Optum, it's a very straightforward upgrade, right? You can get to 9.1 from older versions in a very direct manner, so it's an undertaking that we recommend you do, and it's not super complex. The fact that Discovery is now included is a very big reason that you can use for your privacy, your finding sensitive data, also can be used for test data management and archiving initiatives to help you find relationships. And increased support for Netezza is definitely good new overarching recommendation there. Then when we look specifically at data growth, Optum data growth and archiving, there's some key features here. The fact that we can subset an archive, so I talked about that e-discovery support. So now you can take an archive file as an input. You can segregate the data out of that, subset it out, which will support e-discovery. If we only care about one or two records in an archive, we can subset those out. So that way you're only providing the information that's needed. And that really supports a defensible disposal or your purge strategy, because you don't have to retain the entire archive file now. You can just segregate it out. the Optum Search, which really is Google-like searching through your archives, and we'll show some screenshots of that. And we at BTRG have several solutions. I'll talk about them a little bit more, but one is our Application Retirement Factory, which really supports archiving and application retirement across rapid deployment and acceleration of deployment there across your enterprise. And we've fully integrated that with 9.1 now, so that really supports your data growth initiatives. So on the test data management front, there's a new UI which is sleeker and more efficient. We have a new API that you can actually call Optum from other applications. And there's greater support for self-service capabilities that will allow your users and developers to self-provision testing environments. And we'll give you more details on that. On the data privacy front, now powerful masking on demand, which allows you to do broader capabilities around your masking with what's called Optum data privacy providers, which allow you to call Optum without having to do that through the traditional test data management framework, or even from outside of the Optum extract, convert, and load process as well. And we've got user-defined masking functions which can be deployed separately from Optum now. So really what IBM has done has taken all of the functionality around masking that they have embedded in Optum and exposed that now for you to use. There's a new Lua language that we'll talk, and I'll ask Peter to talk about that a little bit later, but there's a lot more powerful coding capabilities so that we can do much more complex and handle a richer set of requirements with Optum now. And then again, we've integrated Optum 9.1 with BTRG's data masking factory, which allows for rapid deployment of privacy across your enterprise. So as we start to get into some of the details now, I'll ask another poll question around discovery, launch that, and just curious if anyone is using Infosphere Discovery currently in your environment. We want to talk about how that's now included in some of the capabilities that are available there. So I'll just give a few more seconds, about 5 more seconds to answer that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Please answer if you haven't so far. And I'm going to close that out and share the results. So you can see 77% of the attendees that responded not using it. So this is great. I hope everybody understands that this is extremely powerful for the 14% that are using. I'm sure you can attest to it. And so now, if you are not using it, in your 9.1 upgrade, you will have capabilities to leverage it. So we'll just hide those results. And let's go ahead and talk about what Discovery can do, right? So what it allows you to do is understand the data and understand your database that you may want to archive or privatize with Optum, right? So you can understand what data you have, how it's related inside of one data source or even across multiple data sources. And you can also find sensitive data elements within your data sources. And it does this through some column analysis. So it looks at statistics around the columns. It does key analysis, primary and foreign, which allows you to generate an ER diagram prototype. It will do data object analysis, looking at relationships and grouping them into related tables, so that if you have a data source that is not fully understood, you can use this software and this tool to automatically discover a lot of that for you. And again, as well, we find many of our clients that we support, they don't know all of the sensitive data elements that they need to privatize. You can now use that to find it. Very powerful. 77% of you not currently using it today. Upgrade to 9.1 and you can now use this software. And just ask my colleagues on the line, any comments? Does anybody want to add anything around Discovery?
Yeah, Mike, this is Brian. I just wanted to add the highlights and the benefits. Basically, you're looking at speed, time to value, by automating the data relationship discovery process instead of doing a manual process. It improves the success rate because it's basically going at the data and figuring out the complex relationships between the heterogeneous sources. And the third most important part is the integration between Infosphere Discovery and Optum, where it's basically building the business objects, building the relationships, and then it shares this information with Optum so you can import into Optum, which is basically can accelerate the Optum deployment.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Yeah. Great points. That's right. It actually is very tightly integrated into Optum. So whatever Discovery finds, it can import that directly into Optum with no additional development on your part. Thanks, Brian.
So Mike, this is Peter. I need to clarify one thing here. It's a little bit slightly more complicated than just upgrading to 9.1, and I will talk about that a little later. But it's actually a bundle that that a customer would need to move to in order to get the full discovery fully included. So we'll talk about that later.
Right. Understood. Yeah. No, absolutely. And we have a slide on that. So the Optum Search feature, this now replaces Optum Data Find. You may be familiar with that in prior versions. So this is a new feature now replacing Data Find. It's powered by Optum Data Explorer, which is based on technology that was acquired by IBM. I believe it's the Vivissimo acquisition. And so what you get with Optum is a license to use it against your Optum archives. So now you can do Google-like searching, and you can see the screenshot here. You just have a search bar, and you can type in there, and it will show you all of those data sources that have that. So we often have our customers ask us about how to easily get access to the archive data, and this is a great answer now that's available in 9.1. You can just do Google-like searching across it. And then you can license this to connect to other data sources beyond Optum if that's something that you need to do to bring Optum and other data sources together across your search. And again, if any of my colleagues have comments, certainly feel free to chime in. So another new capability in 9.1 is extended support for Netezza. So now there is native support for archiving data from Netezza data sources. And also there's a new paradigm called the Netezza fast migration. So what this does is allows Optum to connect and use the highest performing utilities, the Netezza utilities, to move data around. So with Optum, you always want to use native capabilities. Netezza is a very high performing solution, so we want to be able to leverage that, much like what has been done around Teradata in the past with the leveraging those native capabilities. Now we have that same thing for Netezza. And that's available, and that applies to archive or test data management extracts.
Mike, I'd also like to add that this is our first opportunity in Optum to show that we're moving in the direction of tiered migration. This is a way to move data from a fast but overloaded Netezza box to a larger box and sort of tier out your archive, if you will.
Right.
And so, you know, it's also a step in that direction for us. It's a first step, really, but something that I expect you'll be seeing more of in the future.
Right. And so that really allows you to optimize your Netezza platform and to use Optum as a tool to do so. Thanks, Peter. Yeah. So then moving on now to more of the features around test data management and data privacy. So there's a new interface here, and I've got a little bit closer up screenshots here, but I really wanted to show just an overview of it here. So it's a new interface. It is a more simple interface than what we may be used to seeing in the Optum Classic, and it's really designed to split out some functionality, split out the design of Optum solutions versus the execution and calling of them, which really allows for a greater degree of self-service capabilities. So it's a simpler interface. The intent here is to reduce the learning curve and maximize the self-service capabilities. So if we look a little more closely at Optum Designer, which is again the design time feature, or design time UI. It's an Eclipse-based application. It has what should be a much more familiar layout with an Explorer pane on the right and a detail, or Explorer pane on the left and a detail pane on the right. Very similar to many integrated development environment solutions that we see. Very common throughout the IBM software stack. So this is one uniform interface now that integrates across the IBM stack. And it allows you all the capabilities to create test data management and data privacy at the current time, and with more capabilities coming in the future. And then Optum Manager, again, a closer up screenshot of this, is again a web application, can be launched from your web browser, and this allows now the segregation of the execution. So you can do service execution, monitoring, scheduling, and calling of service interfaces through this. Well, this will allow us to grant access to user community developers or users that need to provision test data or mask data. They can now launch it from this tool, and it allows for one comprehensive interface, one pane of glass, so to speak, to see everything that's running in our Optum TDM and data privacy solutions. And now more detail on the Optum service interface. I'll turn this over to Jonathan to speak a little bit about what this capability does for us.
Thanks, Mike. So what the Optum service interface is, it's basically all of the functionality within the Optum Manager that IBM has exposed in a robust API. And this gives the clients the ability to, if say they've got a custom application and they want to add in some Optum functionality such as service, Optum service execution, Optum service monitoring, and Optum service scheduling, they can now easily integrate that into their custom application using these methods in the API delivered by IBM.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So again, the benefit here is that if you want to call either a TDM provisioning or call masking from another application, you could do that now. So that's a great benefit. So another enhancement around masking is the new function called TransNID for Transnational ID, translation of national IDs. It produces the same results as the previous TransSSN function, but it's broader support. So it includes additional countries like the UK, Canada, Italy, France, and Spain. And it has enhanced formatting flexibility. So it's a brand new functionality for doing national IDs that's a bit more enhanced than what TransSSN does. And BTRG has actually added support for additional countries. So again, with our data masking factory solution, we can provide you even more countries than those that IBM includes. And now the masking on demand capability, which is really powerful, very much a brand new paradigm for the IBM data privacy. So what it allows you to do is mask data outside of the Optum framework, outside the Optum test data management process. So you have something called Optum Data Privacy Providers, ODPP. They allow you to call into the masking functions, and you can integrate that anywhere. So TransNID that I just mentioned can now be called through an API. You don't have to use Optum to do TransNID. You can call it. And then there's some Lua that I'll ask Peter to talk about in a second. And then user-defined functions, which allow us to call these Optum service providers, again, call things like the TransNID function from within the database. And we've fully integrated that to the data masking factory, and I'll ask Jonathan to speak about that in a minute. So, Peter, maybe you could just touch quickly on Lua and why IBM made the decision to switch over to Lua.
Yeah, sure, Mike. Thanks. So just to continue with the flow of your thought first, though, what we did was we split out these data masking functions so that you no longer have to follow the test data management process in order to call them, and we made them available via ODPP, so you can call them directly from a program if that's useful to you. But we really obviously don't expect our customers to mostly be calling them from programs. So what we've been doing since breaking them out is reintegrating them with other means of our customers being able to invoke these functions more usefully and more efficiently for them without having to write programs to do it. And so, the UDFs that we'll be hearing about in a minute are an example of that, and this Lua support, this Lua enhancement, is another example of that. It combines actually two requirements. The other requirement is that we've had a requirement from customers to improve the expression support that we have in Optum for transforming columns as they're being processed in the test data management area. So, with that requirement, what we did was we we provided originally a sort of a very limited expression processing that like allows you to do really simple things like add two column values together, and but it's extremely limited. Wasn't a very flexible expression support language, and so we've in the past had to ask customers who wanted to do something more complicated than that to do one of two things. They could write an Optum basic procedure, column map procedure, or they could write a column map user exit. And the user exit would be written in language like C in the distributed environment or in, say, COBOL on the mainframe. And you know, these were much more work for our customers to develop. So, you know, typically a C program to do this is a couple hundred lines of code, and a lot of that code is just like the definitions of the data structures being passed in and out, et cetera. So, you know, what we then did was we provided Optum Basic, this skinny down the interface, but Optum Basic has only really been available in the Windows environment. So what we've added now is a new scripting language. It's not super well known in the industry, but it's becoming increasingly well known. Lua is an open source language, and it has some simple benefits. It being open source and fast and lightweight and all. We've validated that it runs on every one of our platforms. It runs from Z through Linux to Unix to Windows, so it'll run across all of our platforms. Now, it's not available on all the platforms yet. It's not available on the mainframe yet, but on the Linux, Unix, and Windows environments, it is available, and we're working on, obviously, on the mainframe side. It's a scripting language in which you can just focus on writing the transformation, which is typically something on the order of a few lines of code, rather than the many lines of code needed for passing arguments in and out and maybe converting their data types and stuff like that. So it's a big step forward in terms of being able to write your own procedures. And then what it allows you to also do is call out to the data privacy providers. Essentially, it looks like you have integrated additional data privacy providers so that you can call directly to them. You can do things like conditionally mask a column based on, you know, some additional information you have about it. You know, maybe we have customers who have, say, a telephone number or an email address, one or the other, which is a contact information in a column. And so you can detect what's in that column and mask it with the appropriate Optim masking function with a simple if kind of statement. So it's a big advancement in productivity in terms of masking functions across your enterprise.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks very much, Peter. Appreciate it. Yeah, so again, you know, really the fact that it runs on more than Windows is very key, and that it is much more powerful and it's fast and lightweight. Really, really great features with Lua, and that extends Optum's capabilities quite significantly. And so then the user-defined functions, I'll turn it over to Jonathan to talk a little bit more about how, you know, the benefits around these. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thanks again, Mike. What these UDF, user-defined functions, are is IBM has delivered a way for you to actually install compiled assemblies into your data DBMS environment, which give you direct access from your SQL code to Optim masking functions. That means that you can actually now have Optim masking functions called to process columns in your SQL queries, and that opens up a lot of doors. First of all, you can move away from the classic Optum ETL style of masking, where you have to extract the data out of the database onto an Optum server, run a masking convert process, and then push the data back into the database. Now, with these UDFs, delivered UDFs, you can actually call these, you can actually use an update statement to mask your data rather than doing a classic Optum transformation. And there's performance gains, there's resource, there's a deduction in your resource usage, and it's a very good solution. It's very flexible too. It's not just limited to update statements. For instance, you don't even really need to mask the data in your database now. If you just want to give some reporting access to your live data, you can actually just use these UDF functions to create a set of masked views and give a user reporting access. So whenever they look at one of these tables, the data gets passed through these UDF functions, and all they see is masked values.
Yeah.
And now, sorry.
Go ahead, Jonathan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to finish off saying that our solution at BTRG, the data masking factory, our Optim accelerator, will now fully supports these UDF functions. So if you use the data masking factory to build an automated Optim masking solution, you get both the an Optim classic transformation built for you, or you get a set of SQL statements for a set of use cases that we've come up with these UDF functions built in for you.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So we could spend a whole webinar just covering this change. Extremely powerful, changes the paradigm, and allows for a tremendous amount of additional options that you can actually extend your masking now over to production, which really wasn't possible before. But now we can use these UDF capabilities to even secure production in many ways. So very, very powerful. So thanks, Peter and Jonathan there. So just moving on to the upgrade process itself. It is a very straightforward process to upgrade Optum, and Optum and IBM have done a fantastic job of backward compatibility, right? So you can actually upgrade directly from basically any previous version of Optum. So I'm not sure what versions everyone is on out there, but no matter which version you are on, you have an upgrade path. And part of the reason why BTRG is recommending upgrading to 9.1 for all of our customers. It's a process that is typically completed in hours, not weeks. I always use the analogy of upgrading Optum is a lot more like upgrading Microsoft Office or Word. You run the installer and you do some slight configuration, you're ready to go. It's nothing like upgrading an ERP package, which is a very long and drawn out process. So, you can see there's a couple key steps in here where the methodology we have for upgrading, where we review and do some backups, install the Optum and apply our maintenance and validate, and then you are on the new current technology. It's important because you now will be able to take advantage of all these powerful changes that IBM has made. And really, my opinion is that 9.1 is got so much more significant benefit and functionality in it that it really is imperative that you at least look at going to 9.1 and what it can do, because it's a very significant enhancement. It will reduce your risk, of course, by ensuring that you're up to date on latest patches. If you have any issues with Optum today, they may be resolved in some of the patches, especially if you're on a later version. And then at BTRG, we have a couple offerings which are really focused on helping you to figure out the upgrade process. Number one is our health check offering, which I'll talk about more in a minute, and our managed services. So with these two offerings, our Optum Health Check, what we can do is we can come in a very well-defined methodology, a very short engagement, just a few days for a fixed price, come in and analyze your environment. And one of the main things that we can do in this health check, and we'll talk more about what it does in a minute, but one of the things is to look at your upgrade path, look at the version you are on currently, the gaps that exist from where you are to 9.1, and quantify the benefit and articulate to you the benefits of going to 9.1. And then if you have any concerns about getting there and how you can actually perform that upgrade, BTRG is offering managed services around Optum where you can allow BTRG to run Optum for you. And we have found customers sometimes do struggle with staying on and keeping Optum current and getting the value, continuous ROI from Optum. So we're offering services where we leverage our expertise to execute the upgrade for you, as well as keep your Optum running and performing very well. So before we dive a little bit deeper into our offerings there, I'm going to ask Tom Nestor to talk about those in a minute. But I did want to give Peter a chance right now to just talk about some of the licensing model changes that have come out. So take it away, Peter.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So we saw earlier with the poll that most of the people on this call are existing Optum customers, and I would just like to say, first of all, we do have a new licensing model, but we also have maintained the old licensing model. The old licensing model was one where you purchased essentially piece parts of a solution as individual products, and you can continue to do that today. You certainly don't need to make this change, but of what I'm about to describe, but I do want to say that this new licensing model is also available. It bundles what were previously separate individual products. These things are named the Enterprise Edition and the Workgroup Edition. Workgroup Edition tends to be focused on customers who do not already have Optum and who have a limited amount of data under 6 terabytes of data that they want to work with in the solution that they've chosen. So most customers probably on this call would be interested in the Enterprise Edition. The Enterprise Edition is the one that adds discovery as an additional bundled feature, but there are additional bundlings for all of the solutions. So for example, the test data management bundle now also bundles data privacy in with it. I have more information, but it's several slides, and we really didn't want to get into the gory details in this call. But there's a lot more bundling going on under the covers here, so that, for example, as I just said, test data management now includes data privacy. If you get the Enterprise Edition, it would include discovery. The data privacy includes a Guardium redaction package that is another IBM product that allows you to redact data in unstructured things like emails and even in scanned images and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that's been bundled into the offerings. And then the other thing that's changed is its terabyte pricing. So the pricing before was based on what IBM calls VUs or PVUs, value units, and these are some way to confuse you about the strength of your processor. It's basically another word for MIPS. So the current pricing is based on the power of your processor. This stuff is about terabytes of data being processed. And so in the archive solution, it's very simple. It's based on the total amount of uncompressed data that you actually do archive into our archive files. On the test data management side and the data privacy side, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because what we wanted to do was to maintain the value of the test data management and data privacy solutions. And we think that a big part of the value of that is to be able to run, for test data management especially, to be able to extract as frequently as you want and refresh data, and then to obviously mask that data at the same time. So we didn't want to tie it to how many individual activities you did. We want you to do that in an unlimited fashion, to extract data from production and refresh as often as you like. So we based this price on the total amount of uncompressed data that's being managed. And then we've adjusted the price so that I think that you'll find it attractive. So that's an outline of the new licensing model, and I just want to be clear that in order to get this earlier comment, just to clarify that, in order to get discovery included, you do need to go from your existing model to one of these new terabyte pricing things. And that's an individual thing that we can help you with if you are interested in moving to terabyte pricing. You can stay where you are, you can move to terabyte pricing, or you can do a mix and match. So IBM will work with you on that. That's all I have, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. And also, might be worth mentioning that there's new packaging around the application aware pieces. So for Oracle, if you got some license there, you might want to look into if you say, for example, have PeopleSoft and JD Edwards or Siebel or one of the other Oracle packages. It's worth checking into that, because you may have some additional entitlements now that you can use there.
Right.
Yep. Great. So just moving on, just wanted to talk a little bit more about our solutions and some ways that we can kind of help you get the value out of going to 9.1. So I mentioned earlier our retirement factory. This is a solution that is designed for implementation acceleration. It allows you to speed up the implementation of application retirement or archiving across your enterprise. We do this because we combine several steps into one automated process. So your requirements, analysis, design, and build is done in one step. We build the Optum objects for you. And so that really accelerates your time to value with Optum. And then we have the same thing around data masking. So we've got the functionality covered. We have our data masking factory. It was an IBM Beacon Award finalist last year, so it's really been recognized as a premier solution by IBM. Can reduce your implementation costs. Again, it does that automation of the implementation and speeds it up to a high degree of automation, and allows you to deploy across your enterprise very quickly. Again, both for privacy and archiving. So right now I'll launch another poll. I think it is our final one. I'm just really asking about, if what we've seen today, if you think you can get more value, then I would say, no, if you or are not sure, if you don't feel like you're getting the most out of your Optum investment. We often see clients that have done a great implementation, and Optum's been around, so maybe you installed version 7. It was a great implementation. You got a ton of value, but we do see that there's a bit of a drop off in the support there of do we keep up with Optum and we're continually getting value. So I'll just give like another few seconds to answer that if you haven't already, so I can share the results. Please answer if you haven't. Okay. So you can see the results there. So very interesting here. That's somewhat evenly split. Most people saying not sure and some saying no. So I'm not glad to hear that you aren't getting the full value, but I think there's an opportunity there for each of your organizations to really maximize money you've already spent. If you've already invested in Optum, there are very easy and quick ways to get up on the latest release, and we can help you to get there. And so just to talk a little bit more about how we help get there, we're going to talk a little bit about our health check offerings, right? So this poll question was a little bit of a leading question for everybody, but if you aren't getting the full value today, we've designed our health check offering to do exactly that, to help drive the value that you're getting. So what we see in our customer environments is that, first of all, business is always changing. So the requirements that you had when you implemented Optum, they may be different today, or you may have a different business situation. Also, again, like I said, you implemented great project out of the gate, but maybe the person who had the Optum knowledge left your organization, or you just haven't kept up with it. And maybe you haven't run archives for many years because the pain was alleviated, and now you may be struggling to get new archives run, for example. So, stagnated environments there. And you want to, realize additional value. So again, where we've seen people say, no, we're not getting all the value today, this is a way to help you get there. We can actually help you measure that gap in value and create a plan for you to get that value back. And then, of course, the auditor is certainly questioning maybe why that version isn't current or issues around there. So you want to minimize your risk around that. So I'll actually turn things over to Tom Nestor, who's done a lot of work for our health check internally. And maybe, Tom, you can just talk a little bit about the offering and some of the benefits and reasons we've decided to create this.
Sure, Mike, thanks. Yeah, like Mike said, a lot of the health check is just a perfect match for BTRG. We've got a lot of Optum experience, so it was the right fit for us to develop a physical for the environment, where we can help you to increase the ROI, identify some potential upgrade benefits. Some of the stuff that was talked about earlier in the presentation is, really great stuff, and we can help you get there. Take advantage of some of the new features with, with Optum, so that you can increase the business value. One of the things with Optum is the more you use Optum, the better your environment is. It's not just it's not how good Optum is, it's how good your environment gets by getting rid of some of that data, or from a compliance issue, point where you have, privatize the data, it keeps the auditors happy. So that's the kind of stuff where you can reduce the overall TCO for Optum by improving.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom, actually, that it's not just about solving pain, but moving from a point where we're being reactive with what we're doing with Optum to proactively maintaining our applications and keeping them healthy as well, right?
Right, and so some of the key areas that we focused on during this assessment, and it's of course based on each company and what you have. If you have data growth, we'll concentrate on that area. But you get a complete overview of the existing setup, the configuration, what you're using Optum for, We'll look at the processes that are currently running and ensure that they're working, as you want them to work or as they're supposed to work. We'll look at the environment, check to see if the current setup is supported, make sure that everything's working. We can look at this configuration to see how it's set up, make sure you're using indexing where you need to use indexing, that kind of stuff that can make Optum perform better, and we can recommend improvements there. From the data growth area, we're able to look at the archive data sets and see if the processes are running and you're following best practices to make sure nobody's touching the data and that it's being stored somewhere and being kept. Last thing you want to do is have an archive set up and then either A, not be able to find it, or keep it too long. So we can help you kind of decide whether it's time to get rid of some of the older archives or if they need to be kept. TDM and data privacy, both of those are really about compliance, right? We can review the data privacy rules, make sure they're being applied, make sure that the different private data is being masked, so sensitive data is not being exposed where it doesn't need to be, which is a big issue with obviously with compliance. And with some of the new masking on demand, maybe help you get a process or a strategy in place to start using that. We'll look at your original TDM strategy, see what it was you were trying to do, make sure that you've accomplished that, and improve that and expand it, based on the health check review into other areas. From an application retirement, we can evaluate what applications are being retired, make sure the data is actually being moved to where it's supposed to be moved, and see if there's any additional applications that would fit the retirement mold. Maybe there's legacy applications that you're just not using anymore. We could give you an idea of how long it would take to get that data into an archive and off of your existing platforms. Optum Connect analysis, we can make sure that the data sources are set up right to see if there's any improvements in performance. The newer releases of the Optum Connect, it gives you a lot better performance. It gives you a lot more ODBC connections and stuff like that, so we can check that kind of stuff. And file security, we can look at the Optum security to see how it's being used. Check the roles that are assigned, make sure it's not it's not overly assigned, or if you're using the security, that it's being monitored. And after we do all this, we can provide a report that gives you the results, in an easy to read format, so that we can help you get that better return on the dollars you've already invested in the data management products.
Great, thanks, Tom. Yeah, and so this offering is very well defined. It's again like a fixed price engagement, as I mentioned, and at the end of this, you get a report card that kind of is your physical on Optum. It's your health check. That is a physical deliverable report that you get that can help map out a path to get to higher value. So again, just to kind of summarize here, why upgrade to Optum 9.1? I hope we've been able to convey that there is a ton of powerful new functionality in Optum. Again, we are recommending upgrading to 9.1 for all customers because leveraging this new functionality, we think, gives tremendous amount of opportunity to create greater value, reduce the cost of ownership for Optum, but also, even as Tom mentioned, reduce the cost on your enterprise applications, which is very likely why you bought Optum to begin with. And we view Optum as the foundation for your complete enterprise information governance strategy. So like I mentioned earlier, at BTRG, we view information governance as an extremely powerful business driver that can save you millions of dollars, and Optum is a key component in getting there. Again, like we saw, 70, large percentage of people feel they're not fully getting the value. It is a powerful tool. All the value is there hidden in Optum, and we want to help you expose that value. So we'll just leave some time, I guess, for any questions. Again, if you have questions, you can type them into the chat window. I think there was one that had popped up. I think there was a question. So I'll just kind of go through. One question was, can I buy PVU license old model and install version 9.1? Yes, we can do that. And certainly we could, talk more about the specifics there. And then the similar question, if I bought the old data masking solution, am I entitled to data privacy in 9.1? If you're current on your support and maintenance agreement, you can upgrade to 9.1. Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? certainly go ahead and type them in the window. And while folks might be, oh, actually, we had a question that came in earlier, which was about Guardium and if there's any new integration between Optum and Guardium. And Brian, I think you were going to answer that one for us.
Yeah, I can answer that. Sure, Mike. Earlier, Peter had mentioned Guardium, which is an IBM database activity monitoring solution, and it's also another tool that that BTRG implements and supports. Guardium now has the ability to monitor access to Optum archive files. Thereby, we can add that extended layer of protection or monitoring of your archive files. So yes, there is. It does work with our Optum and Guardium.
Great, thanks, Brian. Yeah, and IBM has done a great job over the years of integrating their different software components. So we are very much aligned with IBM at BTRG, and we see there being a lot of symbiotic relationship between Optum and Guardium and some of the other solutions. And many of our offerings that we have around data masking factory, app retirement factory, what we call a security factory that leverages these components of Guardium, Optum, Rational App Scan, and other tools to be a very comprehensive security package from top to bottom. So great integration right there. So just to wrap up, yeah, go ahead.
Mike, this is Peter. Can I just say one more thing? It's occurred
Sure.
to me that it'd be useful to say. The list of new features, obviously, that we've listed here were the ones that we thought most people would be interested in, but there's certainly more, and BTRG can help you understand that and whether those other additional features are of value to you. Another point that I would just like to make quickly is that we have traditionally in Optum been on a schedule to upgrade on a yearly basis, so that when 9.1 came out in October of last year, you might be expecting a 10.1 in October of this year, but we are in fact not doing that. It's going to be, well, I don't exactly know how long it's going to be, but it's certainly not going to be for another 6 months after that we'll be upgrading. So, there's no reason to hold back in terms of upgrading in order to catch the next release, if you will.
Right.
What we're doing instead is shipping a lot of new function via maintenance upgrades. And so there'll be a significant maintenance upgrade in October, but there will not be a new version.
Yeah, that's a great point, Peter, and thank you for making it. Again, this is why BTRG is recommending upgrading to 9.1. There is no reason to hold back, to wait for another version. And again, if you're not getting the value out of it today, going to 9.1 is a great initiative to help you not only just get onto the latest release, but really create a strategy for extracting value. So at BTRG, we do a lot more than Optum. You can see we kind of have this tag cloud here. You can see a lot of the areas of focus for us, both structured data and unstructured data. So we do both things with Optum and Guardium, as well as enterprise content management, defensible disposal, information lifecycle governance, lots of capabilities around your Oracle enterprise applications. And so we really have created a comprehensive data management strategy, and that's where our focus is. Data is everywhere, and we feel that over the next decade, focus on data is going to even accelerate from where it is today. We see the emergence of big data and folks looking at how to extract value from data. Governance, we feel, is a critical component on your path to turning your data from a burden to an asset. And we have lots of solutions, technology, partnership with IBM, and use cases and results that we can point to that we've been able to achieve for our customers over the years to help them along that path. So for more information, recommend you go to btrgroup.com/IBM. We have just completed a series of about 7 webinars on various topics, very high level to detailed topics. I really recommend you go out there for more information, and you can watch additional webinars and videos on our website. So again, just as we wrap up, another reminder about information on demand. If you're attending IOD this year, please feel free to use our code G 13 BTRG to get extra cost off of your registration. It's November 3rd to 7th at Mandalay Bay again this year. BTRG, as usual, will have our booth. We're number 320 at the Expo Center at IOD this year. We'll be giving 2 sessions on Optum and data governance topics, and we'll be conducting a sponsored event there that we would be more than happy to have you attend. So we'll send out information, more information on those events and everything we're doing at IOD this year to all the attendees on today's webinar. Again, a big thank you for attending today. I really appreciate your time. I know how valuable it is. I hope you got some value out of this. If there are any questions or something occurs to you after this that we didn't address or you want more information, please email us at infogov@btrgroup.com. Certainly would love to hear from you, and hope that we can continue the conversation and help you on your path to getting value out of Optum as well as your information governance path. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar today. Thanks.